History is a tapestry of blood and gold, woven by those brave enough to seize the loom. But some threads are spun by the gods themselves. 6 centuries before the Common Era, the world was a collection of fractured kingdoms, unaware that a single life was about to redefine the meaning of power. This is not just the story of a man. This is the birth of the first superpower. This is Cyrus the Great. It began with a nightmare. In the heart of Ecbatana, the capital of the Median Empire, King Astyages was haunted by a vision. A vine, erupting from his daughter Mandain, winding its way through the mountains, until its leaves eclipsed the very sun. The Magi were summoned. Their verdict was chilling. Your grandson will overthrow you and rule the world. Paranoia is a slow poison. Driven by fear, Astyages summoned his most trusted general, Harpagus. The command was simple yet absolute. The child must die. In the flickering shadows of the palace corridors, a royal life was traded for a death sentence. A silence fell over the house of Astyages, a silence he believed would protect his throne forever. But fate has a way of defying kings. Harpagus, unable to spill the blood of an innocent babe, entrusted the task to a lowly shepherd. In a moment of silent rebellion, the royal infant was spared, hidden away in the harsh, beautiful isolation of the Zagros Mountains. The shepherd and his wife raised the child as their own, a secret kept in the shadow of the peaks. Under the vast Persian sky, the boy thrived. He did not know of palaces or prophecies. He knew only the bite of the wind and the warmth of the sun. He was a prince of the earth, his spirit as untamable as the wild lands he roamed. Young Cyrus, a child of destiny, running towards a future that was already written in the dust beneath his feet. But the silence of the mountains could not last. The winds were shifting, carrying with them the scent of iron and the rumble of 1,000 hooves. The prophecy was no longer a dream. It was a gathering storm, and soon the world would tremble at its approach. The boy who ran through the mountain dust was no longer a secret. He was a spark, and the mountains of Persia were dry tinder. As the word spread of the prince who survived, the tribes of the south began to look towards a new horizon. The age of the Medes was ending. The age of the Persians was about to begin. In the flickering light of tribal fires, a rebellion was forged. For generations, the Persians had lived under the shadow of the Median throne. But Cyrus spoke of a different future, not as subjects, but as masters of their own destiny. The air grew heavy with the scent of iron and the weight of an ancient debt. The 10 tribes of Persia, once divided, found a single voice in the son of Mandain. The call to arms was not a shout, but a low, steady pulse. They were shepherds, hunters, and poets. Now, they were becoming a force that would change the course of history. Every blade sharpened was a promise made to the earth. Every shield raised was a wall against the past. The mountains of the Zagros were no longer a hiding place. They were a fortress. Under the banner of the Achaemenid, a nation was waking up. And at its head stood a man who led not by fear, but by vision. Astyages, hearing of the revolt, sent his legions to crush the mountain boy. But the Median king had forgotten one thing. A man who fights for his home is twice the warrior as one who fights for a tyrant. The plains of Pasargadae became the stage for a clash of empires. The air was thick with the dust of 10,000 hooves and the silent prayer of the soon-to-be free. When the charge came, it was like the breaking of a dam. The Median forces, once thought invincible, found themselves fighting a ghost that had become a storm. The mountains themselves seemed to rise with the Persians. The prophecy had come full circle. Astyages, the king who tried to kill his own destiny, now stood in its ruins. The Median Empire did not fall with a whimper, but with the silence of a new dawn. Cyrus did not seek vengeance. He sought a foundation. The conquest of the Medes was only the first step. From the smoke of the battlefield, a golden vision was emerging. The world was about to see what a king of kings could truly be. With the Medes unified under his banner, Cyrus turned his gaze westward toward a kingdom of legend, Lydia, a land where the rivers were said to flow with gold, and its king, Croesus, was the wealthiest man the world had ever known. But gold is a fragile shield against the march of destiny. In the halls of Sardis, the Lydian capital, Croesus sat atop a mountain of treasure. Every pillar was gilded, a testament to a power that seemed as eternal as the sun itself. Yet, the shadows were lengthening. The Lydians were the first to mint coins of pure gold and silver. Their wealth was the envy of the Mediterranean, a gravity that drew all eyes and all armies toward their gates. But Croesus sought more than just gold. He sought certainty. He sought the wisdom of the gods at Delphi. The oracle's promise was cryptic. If you cross the river Halys, you will destroy a great empire. Emboldened by his wealth, Croesus crossed the river, unaware of which empire was destined to fall. At the Battle of Thymbra, Cyrus unleashed a masterstroke. Knowing the Lydian cavalry was their pride, he placed his supply camels at the front. The unfamiliar scent threw the Lydian horses into chaos, turning a charge into a rout. The retreat to Sardis was a desperate flight. Behind the supposedly impregnable walls of the citadel, the tension was a suffocating weight. Gold could not buy the loyalty of the wind or the mercy of the rising moon. When the gates finally fell, it wasn't just a kingdom that crumbled, it was an era. The wealth of Lydia was now the fuel for a larger fire. Croesus, once the master of all he surveyed, was now a prisoner of his own prophecy. As the sun set on Sardis, the path to the greatest city in the world lay open. A city of hanging gardens and iron gates, a city that believed it could never fall. The torches of Babylon were calling, and Cyrus was ready to answer. Babylon, the jewel of Mesopotamia, a city of legendary hanging gardens and walls so thick that 2 chariots could pass atop them. To the world, it was impregnable. To King Belshazzar, it was eternal. But Cyrus knew that even the greatest fortress has a flaw. It just requires the right perspective to find it. The walls of Babylon were not just stone and brick. They were a statement of defiance. While the world outside trembled, the city within feasted, believing the river Euphrates was their eternal guardian. They did not know the water was about to betray them. Cyrus did not throw his men against the walls. Instead, he commanded the impossible. He diverted the river. As the Euphrates flowed into the basins he had prepared, the city's greatest defense became its widest open door. Under the cover of night, the Persian vanguard entered the city not through a breach in the walls, but beneath them. They walked where the river had once reigned, their footsteps muffled by the soft mud of the Euphrates. There was no grand clash of shields, no rain of arrows. The fall of Babylon was a whisper in the dark. By the time the palace realized the gates were open, the city had already been claimed by the silence of the Zagros. The people of Babylon watched from the shadows of their doorways. They saw a conqueror who did not come to burn, but to belong. This was not a massacre. It was a transition. A new order was arriving with the morning tide. Cyrus entered Babylon not as a destroyer, but as a liberator. He walked the streets as a man who understood that the heart of a city is more valuable than its gold. The psychological conquest was complete before the first drop of blood could be shed. The fall of Babylon was the rise of a new world. From the ruins of the old kingdoms, a global vision was taking root. The sun was rising on the first superpower, and its greatest legacy was yet to be written in clay and stone. Cyrus did not just build an empire of land, he built an empire of the soul. In an age where conquest meant the destruction of gods and the enslavement of peoples, he chose a path that the world had never seen. He became the first king to rule not by the sword alone, but by the decree of human dignity. This is the Cyrus cylinder. Buried in the foundations of Babylon, it is more than just clay. It is the first bill of human rights, a declaration that the diversity of a people is the greatest strength of a crown. Scribes worked by the light of flickering torches, translating a king's vision into a permanent record. It was a message to the future. That power is most enduring when it is tempered by mercy. The temples that had been shuttered for generations were reopened. Cyrus did not impose his gods on the conquered. Instead, he restored theirs. He understood that a man's faith is his sanctuary, and a wise king protects it. For the first time in history, a conqueror allowed the conquered to go home. Thousands of exiles, including the people of Judah, began the long journey back to their ancestral lands. The chains of Babylon were broken not by a hammer, but by a signature. The streets of the empire became a tapestry of cultures. The wealth of the nation was no longer just in its gold, but in the exchange of ideas, languages, and beliefs. A global community was being born under the Achaemenid peace. Religious freedom was not a luxury, it was the law. From the mountains of the east to the shores of the west, the name of Cyrus was praised in 100 different languages. He was the anointed of the Lord to some, and a liberator to all. But a king of kings must do more than just liberate. He must organize. The revolution of governance was only beginning. The foundation had been laid in clay. Now it would be administered across 3 continents. To rule a world, one must first connect it. Cyrus realized that a kingdom this vast could not be held by force alone. It required a nervous system. He sought to turn a collection of conquered lands into a single breathing organism. The age of the lone conqueror was over. The age of the administrator had begun. He divided his lands into satrapies, appointing governors who acted as his eyes and ears in every corner of the realm. It was a system of balance, where local customs were respected, but the law of the King of Kings remained supreme. Communication was the true key to stability. He began the construction of the Royal Road, a highway of stone and dust that stretched over 1,500 miles. It was the first artery of a global heart, binding east and west together. Along this road, the Angarium system was born. Messengers, riding the fastest horses, would relay messages day and night through rain, heat, and darkness. A word spoken in Susa could reach the furthest edges of the empire in a matter of days. Infrastructure was the backbone of his power. Tax records, meticulously carved into clay tablets, ensured that the empire's wealth was managed fairly. For the first time, a centralized economy was providing the stability needed for a world to flourish. His army, too, was a reflection of this system. It was a multi-ethnic force where the skill of the conquered was integrated into the strength of the conqueror. They were no longer just warriors. They were the guardians of a new world order. The Achaemenid map was expanding, not just in territory but in influence. A single law, a single vision, binding 3 continents together for the first time in human history. The dream of a global empire was no longer a prophecy, it was a reality. But as the map grew, so did the challenges on its jagged edges. Beyond the civilized world lay the wild, harsh terrain of the steppes, where a new storm was brewing. A storm that would lead the King of Kings to his final, most dangerous frontier. Every legend has its twilight. For Cyrus, the final horizon lay beyond the Oxus River, in the endless, unforgiving steppes of Central Asia. Here, the rules of the city did not apply. Here, he would face the Massage Te, a warrior culture as wild and untamable as the wind itself. The King of Kings was marching toward his last dawn. The land was a desert of grass and bone. Tomyris, the queen of the Massage Te, watched the Persian advance with a cold clarity. She did not see a liberator. She saw an invader who must be swallowed by the earth. The air grew thick with the scent of iron. The rumble of hooves was a rhythmic pulse, growing louder until it drowned out the very wind. The clash was no longer coming. It was already here. The impact was like the breaking of a world. In an instant, the order of the empire was met with the chaotic fury of the north. It was a whirlwind of grit and steel, where survival was a matter of heart and reflex. In the suffocating dust, the battlefield became a shadowland. Friend and foe were indistinguishable in the haze. It was a fight for the very soul of the frontier, paid for in sweat and the heavy silence of the grit. This was no longer a campaign of kings. It was a struggle of men. In the heart of the storm, the man who had reshaped the world found himself facing the one thing he could not conquer: the relentless weight of time and the wild. As the sun dipped below the jagged peaks, the tide of history turned. The great king, the shepherd of his people, fell where he stood. The dream of the first superpower was left to the wind and the dust of the steppes. The storm has passed. The King of Kings is gone. But his story does not end here. The legacy he left behind is a fire that will burn for thousands of years, long after the steppes have claimed his name. The silence that follows a great life is the heaviest of all. On the banks of the Jaxartes, the world seemed to hold its breath. The conqueror of Babylon, the liberator of exiles, had reached the end of his path. Not with a shout, but with the quiet dignity of a shepherd returning home. His men did not weep for a fallen king, they knelt for a father. Cyrus had built an empire not just of cities, but of loyalties. In that final hour, the many nations he had united stood together in a single shared grief. He was carried back to the heart of Persia, to Pasargadae. There, they built a tomb as simple as the man himself. No grand monuments to his ego, only a modest stone house on a stepped platform. A reminder that even the King of Kings was a servant of the earth. For centuries, the inscription on his tomb would warn any who passed, "O man, whoever you are, I am Cyrus, who founded the empire of the Persians. Grudge me not, therefore, this little earth that covers my body." Even in death, he spoke with the clarity of a sage. The empire he built eventually crumbled, as all empires must. But the ideas he engraved in clay and stone became the foundations of our own world. The dream of human rights, of tolerance, and of a global community began with a single vision in the mountains of Persia. History is more than a record of the past. It is a compass for the future. Cyrus the Great proved that power does not have to be cruel, and that a conqueror can also be a liberator. His fire still burns, a light from the ancient world, guiding us toward a horizon where dignity is the only throne worth building. I am Cyrus, and this is my legacy. The empire of Cyrus did not die with him. It was a seed planted in the bedrock of history, destined to grow into the very concept of civilization itself. His name became a synonym for justice, his methods a template for those who sought to lead with vision rather than fear. 2.5 millennia later, the echoes of his voice still resonate. On the stones of Persepolis, his legacy is literally carved in stone. The processions of nations, bringing gifts in peace rather than tribute in blood, tell the story of a king who valued cooperation over coercion. These figures are not just history, they are a testament to a global dream. From above, the scale of his ambition becomes clear. Cities that were once the heartbeat of the world now stand as silent guardians of his memory. They remind us that while stone may weather, the ideas that built them remain indestructible. Every great empire that followed, from Rome to the modern world, was built upon the foundations he laid. The satrapy system, the postal service, the very idea of a multicultural state. These were the blueprints for the future of human organization. In the silent halls of museums across the globe, his story is told in gold and clay. To look upon these artifacts is to witness the birth of a global identity. Cyrus was the first to realize that we are more than our borders. We are a single human tapestry. The flame of his vision has never been extinguished. It is the fire of tolerance, the heat of human rights, and the light of leadership. Long after the ruins have turned to dust, the name of Cyrus will continue to guide those who seek a better world. History belongs to those who look beyond the next battle toward the next generation. Cyrus the Great was more than a conqueror. He was a gardener of the human spirit. And as we look toward our own horizons, may we remember the shepherd who dared to be a king of kings. I am Cyrus, and history is my witness. And history is. The silence that follows a great life is the heaviest of all. On the banks of the Jaxartes, the world seemed to hold its breath. The conqueror of Babylon, the liberator of exiles, had reached the end of his path. Not with a shout, but with the quiet dignity of a shepherd returning home. His men did not weep for a fallen king. They knelt for a father. Cyrus had built an empire not just of cities, but of loyalties. In that final hour, the many nations he had united stood together in a single shared grief. He was carried back to the heart of Persia, to Pasargadae. There they built a tomb as simple as the man himself. No grand monuments to his ego, only a modest stone house on a stepped platform. A reminder that even the King of Kings was a servant of the earth. For centuries, the inscription on his tomb would warn any who passed. "O man, whoever you are, I am Cyrus, who founded the empire of the Persians. Grudge me not, therefore, this little earth that covers my body." Even in death, he spoke with the clarity of a sage. The empire he built eventually crumbled, as all empires must. But the ideas he engraved in clay and stone became the foundations of our own world. The dream of human rights, of tolerance, and of a global community began with a single vision in the mountains of Persia. We began this journey in the mountains with a boy who knew only the wind and the stars. We end it here in the heart of an empire that redefined the world. Cyrus was more than a conqueror of lands. He was a conqueror of the human heart. He proved that to rule is not to dominate, but to serve the dignity of all people. His legacy is not found in the cities he toppled, but in the temples he rebuilt and the families he sent home. The words he carved in clay 2.5 millennia ago still echo in the halls of modern justice. He was the first to look upon a world of strangers and see a family of nations. History often remembers the fire of battle, but it is the light of leadership that endures. Cyrus the Great left us a compass, a reminder that even in the pursuit of power, mercy is the highest throne. The shepherd has returned to the earth, but his vision remains our eternal horizon. I am Cyrus. I am history. And the story we have told is but a single thread in the tapestry of time. May your own journey be guided by the same fire.